Hello and welcome to PCB Chat, where we talk with experts across the printed circuit design, manufacturing, and electronic supply chain fields. I'm Mike Buetow, Editor-in-Chief of PCD&F and Circuits Assembly. First, a word from today's sponsor. This podcast is brought to you by Turnkey Pro from Sierra Circuits. What if you could source your components, upload your specs, and receive an instant quote in less than 15 minutes? What if your designs could be fabricated and assembled and delivered to your door in 5 days with a guarantee of 0 defects? Then try Turnkey Pro from Sierra Circuits for your next design and use promo code PCB Chat to receive $200 off your next order.
My guest today is Wally Rhines on behalf of the ESD Alliance. Wally is a regular on PCB Chat and one of our favorite guests for his knowledge and his commentary. He has spent more than 45 years in semiconductor and PCB design, including 25 as Chief Executive of Mentor. Good to catch up with you again, Wally.
Good to see you, Mike.
So today we're discussing the first quarter 2021 market numbers from the ESD Alliance. And these would be for the period ending March 31st. And they are being released on July 14th. And without stealing your thunder, this was a big quarter.
It really was a phenomenal quarter. 17% growth overall, a record that goes back many years for a first quarter, remarkably strong. And EDA license and maintenance, which includes printed circuit board, is an all-time record back to 1995 when we started keeping data.
The PCB and MCM keep plugging along. Is this starting to remind you of the personal computer boom of a few decades ago, which helped to drive a really long positive trend?
Could be. I think the PCB at 15% is quite a strong number, just under the overall 17%. And I think probably had many of the same influences, one of the key ones being the fact that systems companies are really active in design right now, and PCB and packaging benefits just as do the other parts of design automation.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about some of the the data just in terms of like each group. So you just mentioned a moment ago that the overall market was up 17%. You alluded to that the maintenance number was really strong as well. So the maintenance numbers are separate from, even for PCB, those numbers are separate from the PCB and MCM segment?
No, those are rolled in together. License and maintenance is part of the total. We do break out services separate from that, where you sell contract services, but the license and maintenance is all one number.
Got it. And it looks like by region, the geographical numbers are very positive too. Everyone seems to be winning.
They are. In fact, PCB is one of the most geographically uniform around the world. If we look at just the first quarter, all the regions outside the U.S. were in strong double digits. U.S. was at the low end. It was only 4% growth, and yet Europe at 18%, Japan at 12%, Asia Pacific at 33%, adding up to that worldwide 15% numbers. The rest of EDA software is a little more offset, particularly in Japan, where it's been relatively weak. Not so with PCB. But
still positive.
Absolutely.
If we consider the market in terms of real dollars instead of just percents, I mean, the year-over-year growth, of course, is fantastic. But we're looking at the total market. The total ESD market turned in a almost $3.2 billion quarter. Where does that stand in the relation to the peak years of the 90s and 2000s?
There's been continuous growth of the industry really throughout the period. In fact, the last 10 years have been quite strong growth for overall EDA, high single digits. Historically, the industry has grown about a point faster than the semiconductor industry. So a bit slow in the first half of the last 20 years and faster since then. The printed circuit board business is basically $1 billion a year revenue business.
Now, on one of our calls a while back, I think I questioned the need to specify MCM. But lo and behold, I'm seeing MCM, and sometimes I think they're called MCPs, multiple component packages, those kind of designs are popping up in spades again.
They are. Now, the way companies report their data, some of them throw the physical design for multi-chip packages in with their other layout tools. Some break it out separately. If we look at the ones that break it out separately, it's a relatively small category at roughly $30-40 million. But a lot of that, I'm sure, ends up in the much bigger category, which is called PCB MCM. That's a $450 million category. And it's good growth, double-digit growth, low double digits. Actually, the fastest growth area is PCB analysis. That includes all the tools for EMI and other things that increasingly are a bigger and bigger part of doing a printed circuit board design.
And that's data that members of the ESD Alliance would actually get that data broken out, correct?
Yes. If you're a member of the ESD Alliance, you get the full breakout down to the categories. There are about 6 categories of printed circuit board design broken out, and they range from in the $60 million range up through the $450 million range for the total year.
I see. Employment numbers are up yet again. Can you give us some color on that on a regional basis?
Well, actually, I don't have the regional data, but what I do have is total employment by EDA companies. Remarkably, right through COVID, that continued to grow and is up a reasonable percentage here, what I believe is around 6% in the this most recent quarter. And really was pretty uniform. Employment grew 6.7%, but it was pretty uniform throughout COVID. In fact, EDA revenue grew throughout COVID, although it slowed down some in the fourth quarter of 2019 and the first quarter of 2020, but it was still year-to-year growth. And then it picked up back into double digits for the rest of that time, and the employment grew pretty uniformly throughout that period.
Yeah, and I guess I should point out that, that 6.7 increase in Q1 of this year, we're going back a year ago in 2020. That was pre-COVID. I mean, COVID kind of was hitting, at least in the US, around mid-March. That's a really big gain for what was already a pretty busy industry, I think.
It really is. I think to some extent it says that design goes on even if people are working from home. And design is something you can interact with other people on online. And there are lots of other businesses that aren't as well attuned to that kind of environment.
Not only that, but with all the talk about how scarce workers are, it seems EDA is somewhat immune based on these data.
I think part of it is they didn't reduce their personnel during COVID. They kept their employment and then continued to hire. And whereas a lot of other industries cut back and then tried to recover, not so with EDA. Design continued. And I would point out that this is something that has historically gone on for decades. And that is during any sort of downturn or disruption, all sorts of aspects of a business can be perturbed, but design continues pretty steadily, I believe, because companies know that someday this problem will be over and the thing they have to have are new products. So they can cut back on inventories and revenue and advertising, marketing, manufacturing, but they can't disrupt their design process noticeably, or they won't have products when the recovery occurs.
I'd like to wrap by just saying, my condolences to the family of Steve Clare, who was one of your competitors, albeit a smaller one for years at Intercept Technology, who passed away in the last month. I'm not sure if you had heard that yet or not, Wally, but I'd worked with Steve on some projects back when I was at IPC on data transfer, and he was in this space for a long, long time. He did provide quite a bit of value to quite a few people, and I'm sure the industry and his friends and family will miss him terribly.
My condolences as well. Intercept was in our face an awful lot for many years when I was at Mentor, but I'm sorry to hear about Steve. He did make a lot of contributions to the industry.
Well, as always, it's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Mike.
This podcast has been brought to you by Turnkey Pro from Sierra Circuits. Turnkey Pro is the simplest platform for sourcing all your components, uploading specs for fabrication and assembly, and receiving an instant quote, all online in fewer than 15 minutes. Try Turnkey Pro by Sierra Circuits today and use promo code PCB Chat to receive $200 off your next order. For PCB Chat, this is Mike Buetow. Have a nice day.